Welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damlola Ogunshakin. Let's move straight to the front pages of the dailies. I'm starting with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with how federal government can execute roadmap for economy. That's coming from NESG, OPS, and all those. Ministers must set specific national targets. NESG is saying that strong coordination among ministries critical. That's coming from NECA, and Adori is saying nationwide security precondition for success. You can see that story on page 5, and right below that we have the picture of Olawale Edun, Minister of Finance. We also have NECA, Director General Adewale Smart. We have CEO NESG. Now, moving on page 13, we have insecurity. We are discussing with bandits to drop arms. This coming from the JGAV. 4.2-kilometer runway. Federal government votes 825.8 million naira to compensate Abuja indigenes. You can see that on page 9. Now, on page 25, Governorship Campaign Council. APC reverses and disowns list with Wike's name. Gombe shot 9 clubs over immoral activities. You can see that on page 13. And we have a democracy ragged salesman that's coming from Baba Ahmed. You can see that story on page 16. Also a Feba Balola story on page 22. And on sports, on page 28, we have ahead AFCON qualifier. Indomitable Lions recall Onana. Stories above, we have Zenith Bank names Juliet, non-executive director. You can see that on page 20 and on page 15. Job racketeering probe. We didn't solicit bribe from NDS. That's coming from reps. On page 9, NNPP BOT suspends Kwankwaso over alleged anti-party activities. Lastly, on Vanguard newspaper, banks, insurance firms, others contribute 1.72 trillion naira to economy. You can see that on page 19 of Vanguard newspaper. Now let's move to the Punch. Punch is leading with fuel queues hit Lagos. Others as thieves vandalize pipelines. Marketers halt petrol loading. Blame vandals for disruption. More filling stations shut as import hiccups odd supply. You can see that on page 19. And we have 3 pictures and with the rider that says Lagos Ibadan Expressway. Federal government plans the September inauguration. You can see that on page 7. Man unleashes dog on policeman to evade arrest. I never diverted Ogun local government funds. 10.8 billion naira bailouts. That's coming from Abiodun. You can see the stories on pages 5 and 7. Stories above, Cameroon dam opening. 700 billion naira CBN farmers loan under threat in flooded states. Flood in 204 Niger communities. 17 displaced. Panic in Benue and Anambra. You can see that on page 2. And that's all on the Punch newspaper. Now let's move to The Guardian. The Guardian is leading with CBN, BDCs on collision course as FX black markets premium widens. You can see that on page 6. And the stories below on page 7. Federal government promises completion of Lagos Ibadan Expressway by mid-September. Private sector okays Tinubu's reforms, seek input in federal government 8-point agenda. Stories about the main course. We have an army of retired active generals still recruiting. Police disrupt gay marriage, arrest 67 guests in Delta. You can see that on page 9. And lastly, on the Guardian newspaper, Reps Pro panel denies bribery allegation, summons VCs. That can be seen on page 5. Now let's move to The Nation. Nation is leading with subsidy cuts windfall. Government saves 1.83 trillion naira in 2 months. Savings to be used for projects. No more borrowing. Elumelu, government's bold decision in Nigeria's interest. You can see that on page 2. And stories above, we have governors lead APC battles in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa. Expect heavy rains in Ondo, Ogun, Oshun, 26 others. Limit, alas. You can see that on page 4. And lastly, on The Nation newspaper, on pages 28 and 2, reports Lagos is 5th best African city to live, work in. Oyo to spend 8.6 billion naira on 200,000 households and 1 million families. That's all we have on the front pages of the dailies. Join us after the break as our guest will be joining us via Zoom to analyze these stories. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damlola Ogunshakin. Joining me to analyze the front pages of the dailies this morning is Mr. Gbero Olajigbe. He's the Executive Director of Emergency and Risk Alert. Good morning, Mr. Gbero.
Good morning. It's a pleasure being with you.
Now let's move straight to the front pages and also stories trending. Now this morning, a dozen Gabonese soldiers appeared on television announcing they were putting an end to the current regime and the cancellation of an election that, according to official results, President Ali Bongo won. What do you think about the military announcing this in Gabon?
Well, it's part of the extension of the remilitarization of Africa. I have said it oftentimes. Ali Bongo, of course, African leaders, even in democracy, they learn nothing. They don't learn anything. They carry on as if they are imperial leaders, dictatorials in practice, and to the extent of tinkering with their constitution. That has been the lot of African so-called democratic leaders. And I've said it for the often time, until people can see the difference between democracy and dictatorship in Africa, there will be no end to this coup. Look, why people opted for democracy is because they believe that democracy will trigger development. Because it's going to be inclusive in nature, it's going to be, decision will be cooperative in intent and in nature. But what we see in Africa today is a departure from Jefferson's definition of democracy as government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's government of a clan, by the particular clan, and for that clan, or if you like, put it, government of a class by a particular class, and for that class. So it's because of the lack of protection of interests of the people. Virtually in all African countries, there is democracy is centralized in the sense that it's not even, in fact, it's an unwarranted flattery if I say it's centralized. Democracy has become something that is being snatched by a particular group for their own interests, as if they are looting a house of gold. That is what they have turned democracy to in Africa. And Gabon is not an exception of that. And what we are seeing today is that the gap created is where the military is taking advantage of. The loophole is what they are taking advantage of. Democracy, I have said it several times. When you look at a democracy that is not anchored on rule of law, it's nothing, that democracy is nothing but basket of autocracy, and it will endure. Democracy in Africa has produced more poverty than development, has produced even in democracy in Africa, including Gabon, people get arrested on the street without prosecution. This is the third time against the previous constitutional requirement that that Ali Bongo is going for. In an election whose rule was determined by his regime, in spite of the popularity of the opposition. So democracy cannot be what election dictates. Democracy is not outcome of election. Democracy is a government that is built on the interests of the people, welfare of the people, security of the people, and at the same time, inclusion of the people in decision-making process through their representative, and at the same time, even directly, by reason of making contribution to Africa. Do you know how many people have been arrested for their opinions, even in Gabon, under Ali Bongo? So those are issues in African democracy. And no African country has deliberately learned lessons about even this thing that is coming up, because they don't even want They don't have, you have a democracy that has no Democrats. Democracy, they don't even believe in. They come in and become imperial rulers. How will that endure? And look at it. Look at how many countries in Africa. Today, 6 countries within 2.5 years that are whose government, the so-called democracy, they have been overthrown, and there is military occupation on the seat of powers in such countries.
All right, we have, like you said, 6 countries now. I think 7 with Gabon. The like of Burkina,
Gabon,
yes, with Burkina Faso, we have Chad, and before Gabon announced theirs, we have Niger. How risky is this for Nigeria, seeing that military is taking over some African countries?
Well, they say that if you see your colleague be dumped into grave, you should be afraid. It's giving you your own proverb that even now or later, you too will be dumped into that grave. That is an opportunity to learn lesson. Nigeria should learn lesson. That you can't ask people. You can't ask people. There's nothing glorious about poverty. You must, and poverty is human creation. And the intent of democracy is that we can work together to exterminate poverty. As long as there are people begin to get poor unjustly. Look, there's what you call just poverty and unjust poverty. Unjust poverty is the one that you prevent people from access to opportunity. They don't have equal access to opportunities. They don't have equal access to education. They don't have equal access to health care. They don't have equal access to welfare. That is unjust poverty you are creating. Unjust poverty will lead to anarchy. And that has been the lot. Government must exterminate that. You can't have a democracy of uneven development. Where you can't turn a country to a pyramid, where the tiniest minority at the top have everything, and you condemn the large majority at the bottom of the pyramid to unmitigated poverty. It won't work. There will be implosion, and consequently there will be explosion. So we should manage the pyramid that we have created so that we continue to shrink the gap between the rich and the poor. Inequality is a driver of violence. And when a country is politically dislocated, economically dislocated, and socially dislocated, there will be justification for coup. So we should not drag Nigeria to that level. And people should be cautious of this. Look at the insult that came from the National Assembly the other day. The people are looting palliative houses now, and they are even saying that the one in Bayelsa, that the goods have expired. Good kept there. For who? Until the good expired, you have no interest of the people at hand, even to distribute that one. Look at the budget palliative given to the National Assembly, and look at the 5 billion they are given to each state. And none of those states have less than 2 million people. And very cowardly 500 people in the National Assembly are sharing almost 20 or 30 times what you are giving to a state. That is a demonstration of unpalatable inequality that should never be mentioned where you say you practice democracy. Democracy focuses on the people and not the leader. The welfare of the people is the priority. Their security is the priority. And where this is not obtainable, there will be anarchy, there will be social dislocation. It is disadvantage being created by unfavorable environment that have been created by the so-called democracy in Africa that is giving room to this anarchy we call coup all over Africa.
The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, and NECA, and other members of OPS yesterday rolled out priorities for the successful implementation of the federal government roadmap for reviving the economy. And the priorities, they said, include a specific national target for each of the 8 priority focus of the roadmap. What's your take on this?
I think the problem of Nigeria economy has not been about a roadmap, but will they follow the road? Those have been the issue in Nigeria. Look, roadmap, no matter how beautifully planned, and be disrupted by corruption. Look at the decision of some people gathering together, less than 100 people who own company, frustrating the intention of making refinery works. How is that a roadmap issue? I think we need more of ethical revolution in Nigeria than all this planning that people will never follow. Those are issues in Nigeria. For example, now, no matter how beautiful the roadmap is, as long as you sustain importation of fuel, it's not going to, there is nobody will take the road will lead to tragedy. So the roadmap is good, and I commend them for doing that. But then they are not going to be the implementer. Even the one the government initiated themselves, the committee they set up, do they obey? Did they stick to the recommendations? Those are issues with Nigeria economy, and that is what we are still saying today. Bringing wrong people at the wrong place. We are talking of a minister that is serving, but it's against the law. Is the president not aware of that? Do you need roadmap to follow rules? They don't follow rules. We are in a nation that we don't like to follow any rule. Those are issues with Nigeria. It's not that we lack knowledge of what to do, but you can't help. Look, you can help somebody that is unable, or a government that is unable, but you can't help the one that is unwilling. In most cases, we are not willing to get our nation out of doldrum, and that is why we are in the mess. And we must put pressure. Of course, now that we have a roadmap by the economic groups, we should now impress it on government to follow that. Will they? Do they have the power to compel the government? The government will tell you that he has his own promise to the people, and they won't even fulfill that promise, not to talk of your own, or following you the alternative route you are creating. Those are challenges we are having of people. And this thing happened because we have indolent countrymen and women. Once we vote, we think that we have concluded our duty in democracy. It is not so. What the result of your vote, what you have done, is just arranging an interview, and you, through the election, you recruit some people. Do you leave your recruit to just do what they like without following their job description? So it becomes citizen duty to begin to put pressure on government to perform. We don't do that. That is empty. That space is empty. And since it's empty, Nigerian rulers take advantage of that and do what they like, in spite of genuine program, genuine plan, genuine roadmap for economy, roadmap for education, roadmap for development. Do they even follow their own development plan? Even common budget, the shortest plan that is yearly, do they follow it? Do you know the performance level of Nigerian budget in the last 10 years? Are they optimal? None of our budget has achieved 70% performance rate. The one they do, just for 1 year, they won't follow. And you are building a roadmap. There are certain things we should, even the one they promise, they will not do. So I'm not excited when I see the economic groups pathway out of Nigeria economic problem. So I'm not excited as a citizen. What gets me excited when you have a disruptive rulers or leaders who want to do things out of box, and you are seeing it. And it's not imperial about that. It's committed to that. And it appreciates the fact that you will make sacrifice for that. So what roadmap are you going to have when less than 50 people, 500 people in the parliament is spending monies that 5 million will spend? So what type of roadmap are you going to have in that type of a country?
All right, Mr.
So anybody is trying to see what, but then the issue is to impress it on government or those in a position of authority to see it the same way and trigger development.
Okay, lastly, let's talk about this one. Yesterday, operatives of the Delta State Police Command disrupted a gay or same-sex marriage ceremony at a hotel in Delta State, and they arrested almost 100 of the suspected guests. Now, Amnesty International seek a release of these suspects. What do you think about this happening in Nigeria?
What I think is that since it's illegal in Nigeria, it's unlawful. Gay marriage is unlawful in Nigeria. It has been criminalized by Nigerian law. And of course, what the police should do is to prosecute them according to the law and not to detain them unnecessarily. They should be arrested. And I support the arrest because it's the right thing under that law, but they should not be detained without prosecution, since it's against the law of Nigeria. The law is clear about that in Nigeria. There is option of fine if you are found guilty, and there could be conviction that will lead to imprisonment and fine together. So Amnesty is doing its own job, maybe to ensure that they are not unnecessarily detained. But nevertheless, since it has been criminalized in Nigeria, the police is not doing something extraordinary, but they shouldn't be tortured. They should respect their human rights, and they should be prosecuted. Those who need to be prosecuted should be prosecuted under the law. Until the law is impeached, amended, or scrapped, law is law, and law is what law say it is.
But Mr. Gbero, there are some popular cross-dressers in Nigeria. Some Nigerians are calling for the arrest of these popular cross-dressers. What's your take on this?
Well, I think that is in the realm of the morality. The law did not criminalize cross-dressing. It didn't, but when you extend it to the level of gay marriage, a man marrying a man, a woman marrying a woman, that is what the law criminalized. I'm not sure. I didn't talk of cross-dressers. But then, that, like I said, that is in the realm of morality. I don't support cross-dressing, but it doesn't abuse my own right. And as a matter of fact, that person, as long as the law has not said that is illegal, there's nothing you can do about them. But then you can advise, counsel if you don't want it. But if they are choosing that and it's not an infringement on anybody's right, there's nothing. You have to be looking at them. I say until there's law objecting to that. But for the gay marriage and everything, Nigerian law has frowned on it. The law, we were all here when the law was made, and I think the law still stands, even though people have not been, it has been lying low all along. But even though they are arrested, they have breached the law. That does not make them lesser human beings. They are not subhuman. Their rights should be respected, particularly fundamental human rights. What you is prosecute them for is doing what the law has told them not to do, and not to abuse their other rights. They have rights to dignity, right to life, right to freedom and freedom of expression, and other rights are enshrined in the Chapter 4 of Nigerian Constitution, which are fundamental in nature. So those fundamental laws should not be breached. But police is enforcing what is in the law, and you can't condemn police for that. Now condemnation will come for the police if they now want to detain them unnecessarily without prosecution, or doing what is extrajudicial to these people.
Okay, let's end this on a lighter note this morning with Mr. and Mrs. And this morning, the only person speaking is Mrs. Mrs. says, this doctor's report says your sugar level is high. You are thereby advised to avoid sweet foods. I will do the best I can from the kitchen. But can you avoid sweet 16s and sugar mummies?
That is a very dangerous allegation. Uh, well, the fact is that nothing is sweeter outside and nothing is more sugary outside. So I think the husband is being, a code has been sent to the husband. So he should decode those language and adjust. This is not the time for all those sugary, whether the one coming from the kitchen or the one coming from outside. Because at the end of the day, there is no good sugar. There is no good sugar, whether inside or outside. All are inimical to our health, whether our physical health, spiritual health, or any form of health, total health. Health should be what you call wholeness. So they are dangerous to us. And of course, they are equally dangerous to our financial health in this time of Tinubonomy. So we should be careful. The little money we have will be spent on the people at home, more on the people at home. You can spend on outside, but not because of relationship that is not guided and that may not lead anywhere outside tragedy.
Thank you, Mr. Agberola.
So, okay.
Thank you for joining
us. Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, and this is where we have to draw the curtain. My name is Damlola Okunshakin. Do want to like and follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and our WhatsApp number is also displayed on your screen. Have a